Hello and welcome. Tonight on our program, mobile money contributes 250 million cedis to tax revenue in 2020. We'll hear from the Chamber of Telecommunications as telecom industry's total tax revenue to government is 3.6 billion cedis.
That today they are not cash cows, and then you also cannot call them MNOs or telcos in that sense. For me, they are one word, and that's the way I like to call them. They are development partners.
Trade and Industry Minister Alan Martin calls on U.S. government to begin negotiations with Ghana and the rest of Africa on the way forward after the African Growth and Opportunity Act program.
Must provide a platform and an opportunity for us to deliberate on our future post-AGOA U.S.-Africa relations.
And what opportunities are there for women in the Continental Free Trade Agreement? Are they well represented at all? We will discuss coming up. Thanks for joining us. Details right after these. Welcome back from that break. Now, tax collections for mobile money operations amounted to 250 million cedis last year. This is according to a report by the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications. At the same time, the telecom industry's total tax revenue to government hit 3.6 billion cedis in 2020, making it one of the biggest contributing sectors to government revenue. Head of Research and Communications at the Chamber, Derek Laye, has been speaking at a knowledge forum by the Chamber on taxation.
According to the Ghana Telecommunications Chamber, the amount of 250 million cedis is separate from other taxes that the government collects from telecommunication firms. Head of Research, Derek Laye, therefore argues that the sector cannot be overburdened with direct taxes on mobile money services since it is already paying such huge amount to government. The Chamber believes any direct tax on mobile money transactions will make it counterproductive.
Necessity. In fact, the UN calls it a human right to actually be able to be connected. So if you are taxing something that is a necessity, like something that is a luxury, obviously that calls questions, that requires policy relook at the tax structure within the ecosystem. And then more importantly, I'll just end by saying that today they're not cash cows, and then you also cannot call them MNOs or telcos in that sense. For me, they are one word, and that's the way I like to call them. They're development partners. And it's important that government begins to see them in that sense, because if you have an industry that can collect taxes from close to 400,000 people.
Speaking at the same event, manager of tax audit at auditing and accounting firm KPMG, Gordon Dade, called for a collaboration between government and the telcos to share costs for tax collection purposes. According to him, this could be part of the digital drive to increase domestic revenue.
Put a lot of digital investment. So you see our vice president going around every time talking about what government is doing with the NIA, talking about NHIS and other investment that is going in the sector. Can government partner the telcos so that there's a cost sharing arrangement? How can government partner the telcos to ensure that these investments are not just done one-sided? So government is doing something, the telcos are also doing something. But can we come together and have an agreement and have a unitized process to this investment so that there's a cost sharing arrangement? And if you're also able to identify people that you can tax, then there's some sort of tax sharing that can also go on. Now, in our income tax law, or even in the VAT, there is that provision that talks about how to tax non-resident providing telecommunication services in Ghana. And now, this particular provision has a very, great challenge. There's been so much challenge with the implementation.
Meanwhile, the chamber has declared its support to government in raising domestic revenue.
Now, government has been charged to do more through digital means to increase significantly the country's revenue mobilization. According to the Managing Director of Strategic Mobilization Limited, Christian Soti, government must strive to collect adequate taxes from the informal sector. Though government has implemented some strategies to ensure tax compliance, Mr. Soti, who is also a former controller and accountant general, believes the best way to complement government's effort of increasing revenue is to ensure that businesses in the informal sector do not evade tax payment going forward. He spoke to Joy Business.
If you look at the tax regime, we really have a fundamental problem, which I believe is being addressed now. Our economy, as the economists always tell us, is 80% is the informal sector and 20% formal sector. Meanwhile, the formal sector pays about 90% of the revenue, the taxes, while the informal sector, which is 80%, pays only less than 10% of our revenue. It means the chunk of the economy is not paying taxes. And we will need to be able to address our revenue fall and to match other economies in our revenue tax to GDP. Then we need to bring in more people into the tax net. And I believe that that is being done by addressing the issue of national identification. We are now addressing addressing system. And I believe when all these things are put in place, we will be able to now bring many people into the tax net.
While Strategic Mobilization Ghana Limited is the country's first digital project to monitor petroleum products across 16 depots, it has so far mobilized 1 billion cedis of revenue within its 10 months of operation for government. Now let's turn to some trade matters. Trade and Industry Minister Alan Kyerematen is calling on the U.S. government to begin negotiations with Ghana and the rest of Africa on the way forward after the African Growth and Opportunity Act AGWA program. AGWA, which enables African countries to export some items, including textiles, to the U.S. on duty-free, quota-free basis, is expected to expire in 4 years' time. But Mr. Kyerematen wants the U.S. to start consultations and engagements with Ghana and the rest of the continent for probable programs. He was speaking during the 2021 U.S.-Ghana Business Forum organized by the American Chamber of Commerce.
That trade and investment between our two countries have not yet reached the levels that would reflect this long-standing friendship and fraternal relations. In my view, however, we have now reached a major turning point in U.S.-Ghana relations. And therefore, this year's forum could not have come at a better time. And I say so based on a number of strategic considerations. First, there's a new U.S. administration in office. I'm not quite sure whether they have fully unveiled their strategy for Africa. But we all know that AGWA was the first landmark legislation in the United States on U.S.-Africa trade and investment relations. AGWA is set to expire in 2025. And so I believe that this year's forum must provide a platform and an opportunity for us to deliberate on our future post-AGWA U.S.-Africa relations. And I believe that knowing the length of time that it takes for legislation to be passed in the United States, one should recognize that we don't have too much time to start this process of consultation and engagement on a post-US, Africa, and Ghana within that context relationship.
I will still stick with trade because the African Chamber of Trade and Investment, in partnership with the Center of African Legal Studies at the UPSA Law School, is holding a Women in Trade Forum tomorrow, Wednesday. It's on the theme Navigating the Contours of Trade for Women in an After Era. Joining me with more is Ifya Amponsa-Mensah, who is a lecturer at the UPSA Law School and also moderator of Women in Trade Forum. Great to have you on Business Live tonight. And I find your theme very interesting, so let's begin with that. It appears to me women are still not too sure if they have been represented well in the Trade Pact.
Thank you very much, Darrell, and thank you to all your listeners and viewers as well. Yes, indeed. Well, one of the reasons that we're holding this webinar, this conference, is to also help with looking at what AFTA means for women in terms of their participation in cross-border trade. You will know that one of our sustainable development goals is still gender inequality. So we want to bring on board the informal trade and all the other businesses that are being led by women to include them in the AFTA era, on this AFTA agreement. Because as you may see in the AFTA agreements, one of the main roles or goals of AFTA is inclusiveness on all fronts, which includes gender as well.
Yes, and I realize that women are making the push for more representation under the Trade Pact. What are you seeking to come out with from this forum? How far do you expect it to go?
Well, what we want to do with this forum is we want to take stock of AFTA's contribution to the economic empowerment of women. We also want to raise awareness of all the gender issues, especially associated with trade. And we want to also look at how trade can promote the advancement of, as I said earlier, the Sustainable Development Goal of curbing or reducing gender inequality. So these are the things we're trying to achieve with this Women in Trade Forum. And we're very excited about it. And we think that it will be very informative and educative to all those out there.
So for those watching, I mean the women watching, what opportunities are there under the Trade Pact for them?
Well, when we look at them AFTA agreements, one of the things that the AFTA is trying to achieve is inclusiveness, like I mentioned. So one of the things that AFTA I believe is going to do is try and move informal trade, cross-border trade, and bring them into more formal channels as well. So we are trying to include and involve all the informal businesses, small-scale businesses, and involve them and also try and make them have formal trade routes so that issues that have to do with maybe dispute resolution, all that can be resolved under the AFTA Pact. So yes, those are the things that AFTA is trying to do, and we are hoping that we can shed more light on it tomorrow during our forum.
So who are the speakers for tomorrow's forum?
Okay, we have 4 panelists tomorrow. One of our panelists is Mrs. Kosi Yankee Aye, who is the Executive Director of the Ghana Enterprises Agency. We also have Yavi Madurai, Madam Yavi Madurai, who is the founder and Executive Director of the Pan-African Businesswomen Association. We have Madam Kululiwe Damuyi, who is a South African-based corporate lawyer at Kdtr Demolition Associates. And we also have Madam Lizzie Kibira, who is a graduate intern at university and also an associate of the African Chamber of Trade and Investments.
So who can participate? Yeah, who can participate in this event and how can they participate?
Well, this event is being done online. It's a webinar that's being done online. So Zoom details are being shared and all you have to do is just join the link, click the link to join. And it's open to everybody, all stakeholders, civil organizations, business makers, policymakers, individuals who are just interested in trade and what AFTA is trying to do. And those who are also interested in women empowerment and gender equality.
All right,
Yes.
we'll be following closely your forum tomorrow. Thanks so much for your time, Ifya. All right, you're watching Business Live. Still to come, the Bank of Ghana insists the recent policy measures it introduced help minimize the expected COVID-19 shocks on the banking sector.
So we think that this is an economy that will continue to show strong growth, although the risks remain in terms of our ability to sustain the progress that have been made with the COVID vaccines.
Hello there. Welcome to another edition of the Money Lab. Today we would consider what a unit trust is. A unit trust is a collective investment scheme whose objective is to pool funds from unit holders and further invest in securities. One example is the oldest on the market, the Republic Unit Trust. Now, the Republic Unit Trust is a collective investment scheme whose main objective is to invest in short-term money market securities. It was established in 1991 and is the first collective scheme in Ghana. Now, for this trust, it is a fund that invests on money market securities, as mentioned, fixed deposits, Government of Ghana Treasury bills and bonds, corporate bonds, and other commercial papers. The fund is well diversified into portfolios of different securities and thus reduces risks and maximizes returns to investors. Securities selection and allocation are done by experienced fund managers.
That was the tour around the world for the latest in business. Now, in other news back home, the Bank of Ghana insists that the recent policy measures it introduced help minimize the expected COVID-19 shocks on the banking sector. Universal banks in the country posted strong profits for the end of 2020 and even the first half of this year. However, some have linked this to some internal measures introduced by the banks to deal with the pandemic. Now, speaking at the Ghana Investment Summit, Governor Dr. Ernest Addison maintained that the regulatory interventions over the last 2 years cannot be ignored.
The story so far, it's a good one showing that a lot of the projects that the government committed to implementing, including infrastructure projects, have been completed. The key strategic factories to provide jobs and accelerate the industrialization agenda have been operationalized. Ghana has recently been removed from the Financial Action Task Force grey list, and the Ministry of Finance has signed compact agreements with the various ministers to deliver on the Ghana Cares program. In terms of the consolidation efforts, as I said earlier on, we are continuing to implement prudent macro-fiscal policies, and we continue to remain on track in terms of fiscal stability. We were able to this year issue a foreign currency denominated bond with a zero coupon, and the energy sector has been revamped. Of particular interest is the issue of the robustness of revenue to support the fiscal consolidation effort, and the government has focused on measures that would help to improve domestic resource mobilization. So we think that this is an economy that will continue to show strong growth, although the risks remain in terms of our ability to sustain the progress that have been made with the COVID vaccines. We expect inflation to continue to remain within our target bands, even though we have had some base drift effects due to some of the recent tax adjustments and petroleum price adjustments. But the government is committed to continue to implement prudent macro policies. The government is still interested in ensuring that sustainability as well as financial stability to support the recovery.
Finally, we head to the Ashanti region, where city authorities have demolished a portion of the Kumasi Central Market as part of construction of the second phase of the Kdtr redevelopment project. Construction firm working on the project, Contractor, requested the portion for construction of a drainage system. Affected traders initially resisted the evacuation or the eviction, claiming the city authorities had not given them space for relocation. There's more in this report.
The demolition of the section of the Kumasi Central Market started at midnight. An excavator drives through the empty shops and shelves for the demolition. The volume of debris on the grounds indicates the workload ahead. Workers of the construction company were visible at the site to supervise the operation. Consultant for Contractor, Emmanuel Danso, says the acquired land area is to ensure construction of an efficient drainage system to avert flooding after project's completion.
It's part of the 100% that we were looking for. We have already had 80. Now the additional 20 has been released, and that is what we are doing now. The main reason why we need this additional area in order for us to check all the drainage system. Though we might not have them all, but we'll do our best to manage and get it clear.
The exercise was carried out smoothly without the involvement of the security forces.
And that's Business Live tonight. Thanks for watching. We are back same time tomorrow.